Hello brothers and sisters, and welcome to the first episode of my new series, The History of Islam. Now today we're going to start with the origins of Muhammad and the battles that went on during his lifetime. I hope you all enjoy and that you get some educational value from this video. God bless you all. I have been made victorious with terror. Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, died suddenly and unexpectedly, complaining that he felt the way he had several years earlier when he was poisoned. As death approached, the founder of Islam muttered those fateful words that could have been his epitaph: "I have been made victorious with terror." It was a fitting summation of his entire public career. The beginnings of Islam are shrouded in mystery. There are thousands upon thousands of reports, which are called hadith, of the words and deeds of Islam's prophet Muhammad, but virtually all of them date from the 8th and 9th centuries, over a century and a half after Muhammad's death, which is traditionally set in 632. There is considerable reason to believe that the origins of Islam and the lives of its founding figures are quite different from how they're represented in Islamic sacred history. Yet for all that, those words and deeds of Muhammad, as recorded in the hadith, are indeed Islamic sacred history, and thus are believed and taken as fact by millions of Muslims all across the world, many of whom act upon those beliefs daily in various ways. Just as Jesus' words and deeds in the Gospels can be known and studied aside from the question of their historicity, so also can Muhammad's. The words and deeds of Islam's founder and the various events that formed Islam as a religious and political force form the foundation of Islamic faith to this day. As Islam is an ever-growing presence in the West, these elements of Islam should be known, regardless of the historical value or lack thereof. Many of the key events of the life of Muhammad and the 100 years following his death, as recorded by early Muslim historians, most likely never happened, but as they are part of Islamic belief in the mainstream and the Islamic worldview to this day, it is important that those whose lives are increasingly affected by these teachings know and understand them. Islamic legend has it that Muhammad began as a preacher of religious ideas, expounding a simple and uncompromising message that there was only one true God and Muhammad was his prophet. These were never claims one could reject without consequences. First came warnings of hellfire. Then, when Muhammad's own people, the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, rejected his claim of being a prophet, his message began to take on a hard edge for the rejectors in this world. The jihad, which is Arabic for struggle, that Muhammad preached often began to refer specifically to warfare against those who denied his prophethood or the oneness of the deity. One scorching day, Muhammad approached a group of Quraysh at the Kaaba, the cube-shaped building in Mecca said to have been built by the patriarch Abraham and his son Ishmael. Muhammad kissed the black stone, the meteorite that the Arabs believed to have been thrown by Allah down to earth at that spot, and walked around the shrine 3 times. Then he fixed the Quraysh with a furious gaze and said, "Will you listen to me, O Quraysh? By him who holds my life in his hand, I bring you slaughter." And he did, not just to the Quraysh, but to the entire world, as Muslims for 1400 years heard his message of jihad warfare against the infidel and acted upon his words to this very day. On another occasion, Muhammad sent men out to raid a Quraysh caravan, but they located it at Nakhla in Arabia only during the sacred month, when fighting was forbidden. Nonetheless, they decided to raid it anyway, whereupon Muhammad was furious and refused to accept his share of the booty. But then a helpful revelation came from Allah, explaining that the Quraysh's opposition to Muhammad was worse than the Muslims' violation of the sacred month, and therefore the raid was justified. In Quran chapter 2 verse 217 it says, "They ask you about the sacred month, about fighting therein. Say, fighting therein is a great sin, but averting people from the way of Allah and disbelief in him, and al-Masjid al-Haram, and the expulsion of its people therefrom, are worse in the sight of Allah, and fitna, which is disturbance, persecution, is greater than killing." Whatever sin the Nakhla raiders had committed in violating the sacred month was nothing compared to the Quraysh's fitna. Muhammad's first biographer, Ibn Ishaq, explained, "They have kept you back from the way of God with their unbelief in him, and from the sacred mosque, and have driven you from it when you were with its people. This is a more serious matter with God than the killing of those whom you have slain." Once he received this revelation, Muhammad took the booty and prisoners that Abdullah had brought him. This was a momentous incident, for it would set a precedent. If a group was guilty of fitna, all bets were off, all moral principles could be set aside for good. Good became identified with anything that rebounded to the benefit of Muslims and Islam, and evil was anything that harmed them. The Muslims' raids on Quraysh caravans precipitated the first major battle the Muslims fought. Muhammad heard that a large Quraysh caravan laden with money and goods was coming from Syria. He again ordered his followers to raid it. This is the caravan of the Quraysh, possessing wealth. It is likely that Allah may give it to you as booty. Some of the Muslims were reluctant. Allah castigated them in the new revelation. In Quran 47 verse 20, it states, "Those who believe say, why has a surah, which is a chapter of the Quran, not been sent down? But when a precise surah is revealed and fighting is mentioned therein, you see those in whose hearts is hypocrisy looking at you with the look of one overcome by death." Allah told the Muslims to fight fiercely. So when you meet those who disbelieve, strike next until, when you have inflicted slaughter upon them, then secure their bonds and either favour afterwards or ransom until the war lays down its burdens. This is famously quoted in Quran chapter 47 verse 4, which is what Muslims still hold to this day, the ones that go out and kill people. Muhammad set out toward Mecca to lead the raid. He knew that the Quraysh would be defending their caravan with an army this time, but he was confident. "Forward in good heart," he told his men, "for God has promised me one of the two parties, that is either the caravan or the army, and by God, it is as though I now see the enemy lying prostrate." When he saw the Quraysh marching toward the Muslims, he prayed, "O God, here come the Quraysh in their vanity and pride, contending with thee and calling thy apostle a liar. O God, grant the help which thou didst promise me. Destroy them this morning." Abu Jahl, which means father of ignorance, one of the Quraysh leaders, also felt a defining moment was at hand. Oiling a coat of chainmail before the battle, he declared, "No, by God, we will not turn back until God decides between us and Muhammad." Now the Quraysh came out to meet Muhammad's 300 men at the village of Badr with a force of nearly 1,000. Muhammad, panicked, warned Allah of the consequences of a Muslim defeat. "O God, if this band perish today, thou wilt be worshipped no more." But soon after that, he expressed confidence in spiritual help that would guarantee the Muslims' victory, telling his lieutenant Abu Bakr, who was the future caliph and successor of Muhammad, "Be of good cheer, O Abu Bakr. God's help has come to you. Here is Gabriel holding the rein of a horse and leading it. Dust is upon his front teeth." Muhammad then gave his men a promise that would make them, and Muslim warriors after them, throughout the ages, fight all the harder. "By God, in whose hand is the soul of Muhammad, no man will be slain this day, fighting against them with steadfast courage, advancing, not retreating, but God will cause him to enter paradise." His men believed him. One exclaimed, Fine, is there nothing between me and my entering paradise save to be killed by these men?" He flung away some dates that he had been eating, rushed into the thick of the battle, and fought until he was killed. Another asked Muhammad, "O Apostle of God, what makes the Lord laugh with joy at his servant?" Muhammad answered, "When he plunges into the midst of the enemy without mal." The man did so and fought until he was killed too. Muhammad, far back in the ranks, picked up a few pebbles and threw them toward the Quraysh, saying, "Foul be those faces." Then he ordered the Muslims to charge. Despite their superior numbers, the Quraysh were routed. Some Muslim traditions say that Muhammad himself participated in the fighting, others that it was more likely that he exhorted his followers from the sidelines, like a basketball game and cheerleaders on the sides. In any event, it was an occasion for him to avenge years of frustration, resentment and hatred toward his people who had rejected him. One of his followers later recalled a curse Muhammad had pronounced on the leaders of the Quraysh. He said, "O Allah, destroy the chiefs of Quraysh, destroy Abu Jahl bin Hisham, Uqba bin Rabi, Shaiba bin Rabi, Uqba bin Abi Mu'ayt, Umayyah bin Khalif." All the men Muhammad cursed were captured or killed during the Battle of Badr. One Quraysh leader, named in this curse, Uqba, pleaded for his life. "But who will look after my children, O Muhammad?" Muhammad at this point may have recalled that it had been Uqba who had thrown camel dung, blood, and intestines on him while he prostrated himself in prayer, as the Quraysh chief watched and laughed. He had pronounced the curse on them at the time, and now it was being fulfilled. Who would care for Uqba's children? "Hell," Muhammad snarled, and ordered Uqba killed. Abu Jahl was beheaded. The Muslim who severed his head proudly carried his trophy to Muhammad. "I cut off his head and brought it to the apostle, saying, 'This is the head of the enemy of God, Abu Jahl.' Muhammad was delighted and thanked Allah for the murder of his enemy. According to another account, 2 young Muslims murdered Abu Jahl as he was walking amongst the people. One of the murderers explained why. I have been informed that he abuses Allah's messenger, by him in whose hands my soul is. If I should see him, then my body will not leave his body till either of us meet his fate. After they have done the deed, they went to see him, who asked, which of you has killed him? Both of you answered, I have killed him. Muhammad thought of a way to resolve the dispute, asking them, have you cleaned your swords? They answered that they had not, so Muhammad inspected their weapons and announced, no doubt, you both have killed him, and the spoils of the deceased will be given to Mudda bin Amir bin al-Jummah, who is one of the murderers. The bodies of all those named in the curse were thrown into a pit. As an eyewitness recalled, later on, I saw all of them killed during the Battle of Badr, and their bodies were thrown into a well, except the body of Ubay, because he was a fat man, and when he was pulled, the parts of his body got separated before he was thrown into the well. Then Muhammad taunted them as people of the pit and posed a theological question. Have you found what God promised you is true? I have found what my Lord promised me is true. When asked why you were speaking to dead bodies, you replied, you cannot hear what I say better than they, but they cannot answer me. So we see already, brothers and sisters, that there is a real malicious intent of Muhammad on everyone. There's no peaceful intentions that he has. He just wants to seek revenge on everyone who have crossed him. The victory at Badr was the turning point for the Muslims and became a cornerstone of the new religious community's foundational story. Many passages of the Quran draw lessons for all believers from this particular battle. Allah emphasised that it was piety, not military might, that brought victory at Badr. Already there has been a sign for you, a sign, in the 2 armies which met, one fighting in the cause of Allah and another of disbelievers. They saw with their eyes that there were twice their number, but Allah supports with his victory whom he wills. Indeed, in that is a lesson for those of vision. This is in Quran chapter 3, verse 13. Another revelation had Allah announcing that armies of angels joined with the Muslims to smite the Quraysh, and that similar help would come in the future to Muslims who remain faithful to Allah. And already had Allah given you victory at Badr, while you were few in number. Then fear Allah, perhaps you will be grateful when you said to the believers, it is not sufficient for you that your Lord should reinforce you with 3,000 angels sent down? Yes, if you remain patient, conscious of him, and the enemy come upon you in rage, your Lord will reinforce you with 5,000 angels having marks. And Allah made it not accept as good tidings for you, and to reassure your hearts thereby. And victory is not accept from Allah, the exalted in might, the wise. This is in Quran chapter 3, 123 to 126. Allah told Muhammad the angels would always help the Muslims in battle and strike terror into the hearts of the enemies of the Muslims. When you asked help of your Lord, and he answered you, indeed, I will reinforce you with 1,000 from the angels following one another. When your Lord inspired the angels, I am with you, so strengthen those who have believed. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve, so strike upon the necks and strike from them every fingertip. This is also an allusion to Quran chapter 47 verse 4. That is because they oppose Allah and his messenger, and whoever opposes Allah and his messenger, according to Quran chapter 8 verse 9, 12, 13, indeed Allah is severe in penalty, in action. Allah warned the Quraysh not to attempt another attack, telling them they would again be defeated no matter how much more numerous they were than the Muslims. If you seek the victory, the defeat has come to you, and if you desist, it is best for you. But if you return, we will return, and you will never be aided by a company at all, even if it should increase, because Allah is with the believers. From Quran chapter 8 verse 19. Allah revealed that the Muslims were not just aided, they were merely his passive instruments at Badr. Even the pebbles Muhammad threw toward the Quraysh were not thrown by him but by Allah. And you did not kill them, but it was Allah who killed them. And you did not throw when you threw, but it was Allah who threw, that he might test the believers with a good test. Indeed, Allah is hearing and knowing. Quran 8:17. Allah promised to grant such victories to pious Muslims, even though they faced odds even more prohibitive than those they had overcome at Badr. O Prophet, urge the believers to battle. If there are among you 20 steadfast, they will overcome 200. And if there are among you 100 steadfast, they will overcome 1,000 of those who have disbelieved, because they are a people who do not understand. Now Allah has lightened the hardship for you, and he knows that among you is weakness. So if there are from you 100 steadfast, they will overcome 200. And if there are among you 1,000, they will overcome 2,000 by permission of him. And Allah is with the steadfast. Quran 8:65-66. Thus were first enunciated what would become recurring themes of jihad literature throughout the centuries to today. Piety in Islam will bring military victory. Allah will send angels to fight with the believing Muslims, such that they will conquer even against overwhelming odds. Flushed with victory, Muhammad stepped up his raiding operations. During one of them, against the pagan Ghatafan tribe, he was surprised by an enemy warrior while resting. The warrior asked him, "Who will defend you from me today?" He replied coolly, "Allah," whereupon the warrior dropped his sword. Muhammad seized it quickly and asked, "Who will defend you from me?" "None," said the warrior. And apparently, he recited the Shahada, which is the Muslim profession of faith, and became a Muslim. Out of fear, mind you. Now Muhammad turned his attention to the Jewish tribes of Medina, the Banu Qurayza, Banu Nadir, and Banu Qurayza, with whom he had made a covenant when he first arrived in the city. He was beginning to chafe under that covenant, and Allah gave him a way out, in the form of a revelation, allowing him to break treaties he had made with groups when he feared they would betray him, not just when any actual betrayal had taken place. As it states in Quran chapter 8, verse 58, "If you fear betrayal from a people, throw their treaty back to them on equal terms. Indeed, Allah doesn't like traitors." Muhammad answered, "I fear the Banu Qurayza," and resolved to strike them first. Striding into their marketplace, he issued a public warning. "O Jews, beware lest God bring upon you the vengeance that he brought upon Quraysh and become Muslims. You know that I am a prophet who has been sent. You will find that in your scriptures and God's covenant with you." He added in a revelation from Allah, referring to the battle of Badr, "Say to those who disbelieve, you will be overcome and gathered together to hell. Already there has been for you a sign in the two armies which met, one fighting in the cause of Allah and another of disbelievers. They saw with their eyes that there were twice their number, but Allah supports with his victory whom he wills. Indeed in that it is a lesson for those of vision." Quran chapter 3 verse 10. The Qurayza Jews were not impressed and replied, "Muhammad, you seem to think that we are your people. Do not deceive yourself because you encountered a people with no knowledge of war, got the better of them. For by God, if we fight you, you will find that we are real men." Muhammad's forces laid siege to them until they offered him unconditional surrender. But then a Muslim, classified as one of the hypocrites, those who claimed to be a Muslim but disobeyed Allah's entire laws and commandments and opposed and even mocked Muhammad, pleaded that Muhammad be merciful with them because he had business connections with many of them. Muhammad was angered and he agreed to spare the Qurayza if they turned over their property as a booty to the Muslims and left Medina. However, Muhammad wanted to make sure this sort of thing didn't happen again, and he received a revelation about the relationships that should prevail between Muslims and non-Muslims. "O you who have believed, do not take the Jews and Christians as friends and allies. They are friends and allies of one another, and whoever is a friend and ally to them among you, then indeed he is of them. Indeed Allah guides not the wrongdoing people." Quran chapter 5 verse 51. Allah harshly scolded those who feared a loss of property prospects because of Muhammad's jihad, warning them not to hurry to the unbeliever's side. So you see those in whose hearts is disease heartening to them, saying, "We are afraid a misfortune may strike us." But perhaps Allah will bring conquest or decision from him, and they will be overcome. They will become over what they have been concealing with themselves, regretful. That's in Quran chapter 5 verse 52. After the battle of Badr and the action against the Qurayza Jews, Muhammad turned his wrath against the Jewish poet Kabin al-Ashraf, who according to Ishaq composed amatory verses of an insulting nature about the Muslim women. Incensed, Muhammad asked his followers, "Who is willing to kill al-Ashraf, who has hurt Allah and his apostle?" A young Muslim named Muhammad bin Maslama volunteered. When the Prophet assented, Maslama made a request. "Then allow me to say a false thing, in effect to deceive Ka'b." Muhammad granted his wish, and so Maslama went to Ka'b and began to complain about the self-proclaimed prophet to whom he had dedicated his life. "That man demands sadaqah or zakat alms from us, and he has troubled us, and I have come to borrow something from you." He worked hard to gain Ka'b's trust. In order to get close enough to Ka'b to be able to kill him, professed to admire his perfume. Which is pretty homoerotic, wouldn't you say, brothers and sisters? "I've never smelt a better scent than this. Will you allow me to smell your head?" Ka'b agreed. Maslama thereupon caught Ka'b in a strong grip and commanded his companions, "Get at him." They killed Ka'b and then hurried to inform the Prophet, carrying his head with them. When Muhammad heard the news, he screamed, "Praise to God." After the murder of Ka'b, Muhammad issued a blanket command, Kill any Jew that falls into your power. This was not a military order. The first victim was the Jewish merchant Ibn Sinaya, who had social and business relations with the Muslims. The murderer, Muhaisa, was rebuked for the deed by his brother, who was not yet a Muslim. Muhaisa was unrepentant. He told his brother, "Had the one who ordered me to kill him ordered me to kill you, I would have cut your head off." Muhaisa was impressed. "By God, a religion which can bring you to this is marvellous." He became a Muslim. Muhammad would need his help. After they defeated Badr, the Quraysh were itching for revenge. They assembled 3,000 troops against 1,000 Muslims at a mountain near Mecca named Uhud. Muhammad, brandishing a sword, led the Muslims into battle as usual. This time, the Quraysh were far more determined and the Muslims were routed. Muhammad's child bride Aisha later recounted that the Muslims were initially winning at Uhud, but then their lines collapsed in confusion due to supernatural intervention. Satan, Allah's curse be upon him, cried loudly, "O Allah's worshippers, beware of what is happening." On that, the front flies of the Muslim forces turned their backs and started fighting with the back flies. Muhammad himself had his face blooded and a tooth knocked out. Rumours even flew around the battlefield that he had been killed. When he was able to find water to wash the blood off his face, Muhammad vowed revenge. The wrath of God is fierce against him who bloodied the face of his prophet. When Sufyan, the Quraysh commander, taunted the Muslims, Muhammad told his lieutenant, Umar, to respond, who was another future caliph and future successor of Muhammad, "God is most high and most glorious, we are not equal." After Uhud came revelations to explain the setback. While Badr was Allah's victory, Uhud was not Allah's defeat, but the result of the Muslims' failure of courage and lust for things of this world. Specifically in the case of the spoils of war, the goods and women they hoped to win from the Quraysh. And Allah had certainly fulfilled his promise to you when you were killing the enemy by his permission, until when you lost courage and fell to disputing about the order and disobeyed after he shown you that which you love. Among you are some who desire this world, and among you are some who desire the hereafter. Then he turned you back from them that he might test you, and he has already forgiven you, and Allah is the possessive bounty for the believers. We can see here, brothers and sisters, that there's not a shred of peace in this book so far, at all, that we've read from the Quran chapters that I've named. Another revelation exhorted the Muslims to fight valiantly, assuring them that their lives were in no danger until the day Allah had decreed that they must die. And it is not for one to die except by permission of Allah, a decree determined. And whoever desires a reward of this world, we will give him thereof. And whoever desires a reward of the hereafter, we will give him thereof. And we will reward the grateful. That is in Quran chapter 3, verse 145. Allah reminded them of his help given to the Muslims in the past, and reminded them that piety was the key to victory. In Quran chapter 3 again, verses 123 to 27, "And already had Allah given you victory at Badr, while you were few in number. Then fear Allah, perhaps you will be grateful, when you said to the believers, is it not sufficient for you that your Lord should reinforce you with 3,000 angels sent down? Yes, if you remain patient and conscious of him, and the enemy come upon you in rage, your God will reinforce you with 5,000 angels having marks. And Allah made it not accept as good tidings for you, and to reassure your hearts thereby. And victory is not accept from him, who exalted in might, the wise, that he might cut down a section of the disbelievers or suppress them so that they turn back disappointed." The lesson was clear. The only path to success was Islam, and the cause of all failure was the abandonment of Islam. Allah promised that the Muslims would soon be victorious again, provided that they depended solely on him, and rejected all accord with non-Muslims. Not long after the Battle of Uhud, some members of one of the Jewish tribes of Medina, the Banu Nadir, conspired to kill Muhammad by dropping a large stone on his head as he passed by one of their houses. As we can see, there was much animosity between the Jews and the Muslims from day one of the genesis of Islam, at the rise of Islam. However, some of the Muslims learned of the plot, and they notified him. Rather than appealing to the leaders of the Nadir to turn over the guilty men, he sent word to them, "Leave my country and do not live with me. You have intended treachery." Muhammad told the Muslims the Jews have declared war. He ordered his men to march out against the tribe and lay siege to them. Finally, the Nadir agreed to exile themselves. Muhammad commanded them to turn over their weapons and allowed them to keep as much of the rest of their property as they could carry on their camels. Some of the Nadir even destroyed their houses, loading as much on the backs of their camels as they possibly could. The rest of their belongings became Muhammad's personal property, which he distributed as booty among the Muhajirun, the Muslims who had emigrated with him from Mecca to Medina. In a revelation, Allah told Muhammad that it was divine terror who had defeated the Banu Nadir and that they were all bound for hell. In the aftermath of the expulsion of the Kunuka and Nadir Jews from Medina, some of those who remained approached the Quraysh offering an alliance against Muhammad. The Quraysh readily accepted. Muhammad, forewarned of this new alliance, had a trench dug around Medina. During the digging of the trench, Muhammad had visions of conquering the areas bordering Arabia. One of the earliest Muslims, Salman the Persian, the story goes, was working on the trench when he began having trouble with a particularly large rock. The apostle, explained Salman, who was near at hand, saw me hacking and saw how difficult the place was. He dropped down onto the trench and took the pick from my hand and gave such a blow that lightning showed beneath the pick. The flash of lightning shot out, illuminating everything between the two tracts of black stones, that is, Medina's two tracts of black stones, like a lamp inside a dark room. Muhammad shouted the Islamic cry of victory, which is Allahu Akbar, as the terrorists use today, and all the Muslims responded with the same. This happened again, and then a third time in exactly the same way. Finally, Salman asked him, "What is the meaning of this light beneath you pick as you strike?" He responded, "Did you really see that, Salman? The first means that God has opened up to me the Yemen, the second Syria in the west, and the third the east." Or, according to another version of the same story, "I struck my first blow and what you saw flashed out, so that the palaces of Al-Hira, which is today southern Iraq, and Al-Madai of Kisra, the winter capital of the Sasanian Empire in Iran, modern-day Iran, lit up for me as if they were dog's teeth, and Gabriel informed me that my nation would be victorious over them. The second blow illuminated in the same way the palaces of the Palmen in the lands of the Byzantines, and the third the palaces of Sana, that is Yemen. Gabriel promised him victory over each, repeating 3 times, 'Rejoice, victory shall come to them.' To this Muhammad replied, 'Praise be to God, the promise of one who is true and faithful. He's promised us victory after tribulation.'" Decades later, when the countries named this legend were indeed conquered by the warriors of jihad, an old Muslim used to say, "Conquer where you will, you have not conquered, and to the resurrection day you will not conquer city whose keys God has not given beforehand to Muhammad." As the Quraysh, along with another tribe, the Ghatafan, known collectively in Islamic tradition as the Confederates, laid siege to Medina, the trench did prevent their breaking through and entering the city, but the Muslims were unable to force them to end the siege. Meanwhile, the Banu Qurayza began collaborating with the Quraysh. As the siege dragged on, it lasted 3 weeks, the Muslim situation grew more perilous. Conditions became so bad that one Muslim remarked bitterly about Muhammad's territorial ambitions and his designs on the 2 great powers that bordered Arabia, the Persian Empire of Chosroes and the Eastern Byzantine Empire of Caesar. Muhammad used to promise us that we should eat the treasures of Chosroes and Caesar, and today not one of us can feel safe in going to the privy. The Qurayza agreed to attack them from one side while the Quraysh besieged them from the other. But then events took a turn for the Muslims. A strong wind blew up around this time, making it impossible for the Quraysh to keep their tents up or fires going. Sufyan had had enough, the general. He said to his men, "Quraysh, we are not in a permanent camp. The horses and camels are dying. The Qurayza have broken their word to us, and we have heard disquieting reports of them. You can see the violence of the wind, which leaves us neither cooking pots nor fire, nor tents to count off. Be off, for I am going." The Quraysh began to abandon their positions around Medina. Islam was saved, for the time being. After the successful resolution of the Battle of the Trench, the angel Gabriel himself made sure that Muhammad settled account with the Qurayza Jews. According to Aisha, when Muhammad returned on the day of the Battle of Al-Khandaq trench, he put down his arms and took a bath. Then Gabriel, whose head was covered with dust, came to him, saying, "You have put down your arms." "But Allah, I have not put down my arms yet." Allah's messenger responded, "Where to go now?" Gabriel said, "This way," pointing towards the tribe of Bani Qurayza. So Allah's messenger went out towards them. As his armies approached the fortifications of the Qurayza, Muhammad addressed them in terms that have become familiar usage for Islamic jihadists when speaking of Jews today, language that, as we have seen, also made its way into the Quran. "You brothers of monkeys, has God disgraced you and brought his vengeance upon you?" The Quran in 3 places, chapter 2 verse 62-65, chapter 5 verse 59-60, and chapter 7 verse 166 says that Allah transformed the Sabbath breaking Jews into pigs and monkeys. The Qurayza Jews tried to soften his wrath, saying, "You are not a barbarous person," but the Prophet of Islam was in no need to be appeased. We told the Muslims who were with him that a warrior who passed by on a white mule was actually Gabriel, who had been sent to Banu Qurayza to shake their castles and strike terror to their hearts. The Muslims laid siege to the Qurayza stronghold for 25 days, until, according to Ibn Ishaq, they were sore pressed. And as Muhammad had warned, God cast terror into their hearts. After the Qurayza surrendered, Muhammad decided to put the fate of the tribe into the hands of the Muslim warrior Ibn Muda. Muda pronounced, "I gave the judgment that their warriors should be killed and their children and women should be taken as captives." Muhammad was very, very pleased. "Oh, you have judged amongst them with or similar to the judgment of the king." He confirmed his judgment as that of Allah himself. "You have decided in confirmation to the judgment of Allah above the 7 heavens." His sentence was duly carried out, with Muhammad himself actively participating. According to Ibn Ishaq, the apostle went out to the market of Medina, which is still its market today, and dug trenches in it. Then he sent for the men of the Qurayza, and struck off their heads in those trenches as they brought out to him in batches. One of the Prophet's fiercest enemies among the Qurayza, Huyai, proclaimed, "God's command is right, a book and a decree, a massacre have been written against the sons of Israel." Then Muhammad struck off his head. Buddha's judgment had been to kill the men and enslave the women and children. One of the captives, Atiyah al-Kharazi, explained how the Muslims determined who was a man and who wasn't. "I was among the captives of Banu Qurayza. They examined us, and those who had begun to grow hair were killed, and those who had not were not killed. I was among those who had not grown hair." Ishaq puts the number of those killed at 600 or 700 in all, although some put the figure as high as 800 or 900. Another early biographer of Muhammad, Ibn Sa'id, said there were between 600 and 700 in number. As the Qurayza were being led to Muhammad in groups, someone asked Ka'b bin Asad what was happening. "Will you never understand?" replied the distraught leader of the Qurayza. "Don't you see that the summoner never stops and those who are taken away do not return? By Allah, it is death." Allah also sent down a revelation referring obliquely to the massacre, and he brought down those who supported them among people of the book, which is referring to the Jews and the Christians, from their fortresses and cast terror into their hearts. "A party you killed, and you took captive a party." Quran 33, verse 26. Allah again claims sole responsibility for the victory. "You who have believed, remember the favour of Allah upon you, when armies came to you and we sent upon them a wind, and armies you did not see. And Allah ever sees what you do, when they came at you from above you, from below you, when eyes shifted, and hearts reached the throats, and you assumed about Allah assumptions. There the believers were tested and shaken with a severe shaking." Thus in Quran 33, verses 9 to 11. Meanwhile, Muhammad's cool head and trust in Allah, when things looked bleakest for them, stood him in good stead. Allah gave him a revelation telling the Muslims to imitate him. "There has certainly been for you in the Messenger of Allah an excellent pattern for anyone whose hope is in him and the last day and remembers him often." Quran 33:21. Muhammad was now the undisputed leader of Medina, and the Prophet enjoyed immediate economic advantage. A hadith records that people used to give some of their date palms to him as a gift, so he conquered Bani Qurayza and Bani an-Nadir, whereupon he started returning their favours, but challenges to his consolidation of power over all Arabia remained. He was very power-hungry, as we can see, brothers and sisters. He was not content with living in peace. He was an absolute demon, and he wanted to dominate everyone. He was a megalomaniac. He was embodiment of it. He received word that the Banu al-Mustalik, another tribe related to the Quraysh, were gathered against them, so he led the Muslims out to attack them. And Allah, according to Ibn Ishaq, put the al-Mustalik to flight and killed some of them and gave the apostles their wives, children and property as booty. There were, according to Muslim warrior al-Qadri, some excellent Arab women among the captives of the Banu al-Mustalik. We desired them, for we were suffering from the absence of our wives, but at the same time we also desired ransom for them. The Quran permitted them to have sexual intercourse with slave girls captured in battle. In a very famous verse and chapter from 4 verse 24, those captives whom your right hands possess, but if they intended to keep the women as slaves, they couldn't collect ransom money for them. So, Said explained, we decided to have sexual intercourse with them, but by observing as all, that is coitus interruptus. Muhammad, however, told them that this was not necessary. It does not matter if you do not do it, for every soul that is born up to the day of resurrection will be born. Conceptions and births were up to Allah alone. Enslavement and rape of the women were taken for granted. In the year 628, Muhammad and the Quraysh commenced a 10-year truce with the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Muhammad wanted to make the pilgrimage to Mecca, and he was willing to make concessions to the Quraysh to be allowed to do so. When the time came for the agreement to be written, Muhammad called for one of his earliest and most fervent followers, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and told him to write, "In the name of Allah, the Compassionate, the Merciful." But the Quraysh negotiator, Suhail bin Amir, stopped him. "I do not recognize this, but write, 'In thy name, Allah.'" Muhammad told Ali to write what Suhail had directed. When Muhammad directed Ali to continue by writing, "This is what Muhammad has agreed with Suhail bin Amir," Suhail protested again. "If I witnessed that you were God's apostle," he told Muhammad, "I would not have fought you. Write your own name and the name of your father." Again Muhammad told Ali to write the document that Suhail wished. The treaty that was finally agreed to read was this way: "This is what Muhammad Abdullah has agreed with Suhail bin Amir. They have agreed to lay aside war for 10 years, during which men can be safe and refrain from hostilities, on condition that if anyone comes to Muhammad without the permission of his guardian, he will return them to him. And if any of those with Muhammad comes to Quraysh, they will not return him to him. We will not show enmity one to another, and there shall be no secret reservation or bad faith. He who wishes to enter into a bond, an agreement with Muhammad, may do so, and he who wishes to enter into a bond, an agreement with Quraysh, may do so." The Quraysh added, "You must retire from us this year, and not enter Mecca against our will. The next year we will make way for you, and you can enter it with your companions and stay there 3 nights. You may carry your riders' weapons, the swords in their sheaths. You can bring in nothing more." Muhammad shocked his men by agreeing that those fleeing the Quraysh and seeking refuge with the Muslims would be returned to the Quraysh, while those fleeing the Muslims and seeking refuge with the Quraysh would not be returned to the Muslims. Muhammad insisted that the Muslims had been victorious, despite all appearances to the contrary, and Allah confirmed this view in a new revelation. "Indeed, we have given you a clear conquest," in Quran chapter 48 verse 1. As if in compensation, Allah promised new spoils to the Muslims. Certainly was Allah pleased with the believers when they pledged allegiance to you under the tree, and he knew what was in their hearts. So he sent down tranquility upon them, and rewarded them with an imminent conquest and much war booty which they will take. And ever is Allah exalted in might and wise. He has promised you much booty that you will take, and has hastened this for you, and withheld the hands of people from you, that it may be a sign for the believers, and he may guide you to a straight path. Quran 48 verses 18-20. Soon after this promise was made, a Quraysh woman, Kulthum, joined the Muslims in Medina. Her 2 brothers came to Muhammad, asking that she be returned, in accordance with the agreement between him and Quraysh at Hudaybiyah. But Muhammad refused. He was following Allah's orders. "You who have believed, when the believing women came to you as immigrants, examine them. Allah is most knowing as to their faith, and if you know them to be believers, then do not return them to the disbelievers. They are not lawful for you, they are lawful for them." This odd locution is generally understood as meaning that neither wives nor husbands are lawful for the disbelievers. The passage continues, "But give the disbelievers what they have spent, and there is no blame upon you if you marry them when you have given them their due compensation. And hold not to marriage bonds with disbelieving women, but ask for what you have spent, and let them ask for what they have spent. That is the judgment. He judges between you, and Allah is known and wise." Quran chapter 60 verse 10. In refusing to send Kulthum back to the Quraysh, Muhammad broke the treaty, claiming that the treaty stipulated the Muslims would return to the Quraysh any man who came to them, not any woman. So he twisted the wordage there in the language, which is what Muhammad is best at because he's a liar, and so is his God. However, Muhammad soon began to accept men from the Quraysh as well, thus definitively breaking the treaty. The breaking of the treaty in this way would reinforce the principle that nothing was good except what was advantageous to Islam, nothing evil except what hindered Islam. So, clearly he acted like a child, and he screamed and threw his dummy out, so to speak, whenever anything he didn't like befell him. So, this is what we're dealing with, brothers and sisters. Allah had promised the Muslims disgruntled by the treaty of Hudaybiyah much booty, in Quran chapter 48:19. To fulfill this promise, Muhammad led them against the Khaybar oasis, which was inhabited by Jews, many of them exiles, from Medina. One of the Muslims later remembered, when the apostle raided a people, he waited until the morning. If he heard a call to prayer, he held back. If he didn't hear it, he attacked. Came to Khaybar by night, and the apostle passed the night there, and when morning came, he did not hear the call to prayer, so he rode, and we rode with him. We met the workers of Khaybar coming out in the morning with their spades and baskets. When they saw him and the army, they cried, Muhammad was his false, and turned tail and fled. The apostle said, Khaybar is destroyed. When we arrive in the people's square, it is a bad morning for those who have been warned. The Muslims' advance was inexorable. The apostle, according to Ishaq, seized the property piece by piece and conquered the forts one by one as he came to them. Sa'id reports that the battle was fierce. The polytheist killed a large number of the companions, and he also put to death a very large number of them. He killed 93 men of the Jews. Muhammad and his men offered the Fajr prayer, which is the Islamic dawn prayer before it was light, then entered Khaybar itself. They immediately set out to locate the inhabitants' wealth. The Jewish leader of Khaybar, Kinana bin al-Rabi, was brought before him. Kinana was supposed to have been entrusted with the treasure of the Banu Nadir. Kinana denied knowing where this treasure was. Muhammad pressed her, Do you know that if we find you have it, I shall kill you? Kinana said yes, that he did know that. Some of the treasure was found. To find the rest, Muhammad gave orders concerning him. Torture him until you extract what he has. One of them built a fire on Kinana's chest, but Kinana would not give up his secret. When he was at the point of death, Muhammad bin Maslama, who was the killer of Ashraf, beheaded him. Muhammad agreed to let the people of Khaybar go into exile, allowing them, as he had the Banu Nadir, to keep as much of their property as they could carry. They seem a really intolerant folk, don't they, brothers and sisters? And that still continued to this day with their intolerant, narcissistic, demonic streak. The Prophet of Islam, however, commanded them to leave behind all their gold and silver. He had intended to expel all of them, but some farmers begged him to let them stay if they gave him half of their yield annually. Muhammad agreed, I will allow you to continue here so long as we would desire. He warned them, if we wish to expel you, we will expel you. They no longer had any rights that did not depend upon the goodwill, sufferance of Muhammad and his folk. And indeed, when they discovered some treasure that some of the Khaybar Jews had hidden, he ordered the women of the tribe enslaved and seized the perpetrator's land. Typical move by him. A hadith notes that he had their warriors killed, the offspring and women taken as captives. During the Caliphate of Umar, which was 634 to 644, the Jews who remained at Khaybar were banished to Syria, and the rest of their land was seized. To this day, Muslims warn Jews of impending massacres by chanting Khaybar, Khaybar, Jews, the army of Muhammad will return. One of the warriors, Dia ibn Khalifa, came to Muhammad and said, Give me a slave girl from the captives. He was agreeable, telling Dia, Go and take any slave girl. Dia chose a woman named Safia bint Huyayah. Safia was the daughter of Huyayah bin Akhtab, who had induced the Banu Qurayza Jews to repudiate their alliance with Muhammad. Muhammad had killed Huyayah along with the rest of the men of the Qurayza. Safia's husband was Kinana ibn Rabi, who had just been tortured and killed by their warriors of jihad. Once captured herself, she had won the admiration of the boys of Islam. He told them, We have not seen the like of her among the captives of war. One man added, Muhammad, you gave Safia bint Huyayah to Dia, and she is the chief mistress of the tribes of Qurayza and Nadir. She befits none but you. Muhammad accordingly called for Dia and Safia. When he saw Safia, he told Dia, Take any slave girl other than her from the captives. Muhammad then immediately freed her and married her himself. Since she agreed to convert to Islam, she was able to be elevated beyond the position of a slave. That night, Safia was dressed as a bride, and a wedding feast was hastily arranged. On the way out of Khaybar that night, Muhammad halted his caravan as soon as they were outside the oasis, pitched a tent, consummated the marriage pretty quickly. Safia went from being the wife of a Jewish chieftain to being the wife of the man who murdered her father and husband in a single day. Wrap that around your head, brothers and sisters. Muhammad then marched on Mecca with an army of, according to some reports, 10,000. When the Meccans saw the size of their force, which Muhammad exaggerated by ordering his men to build many extra fires during the night, as his men were assembled outside the city, they knew that all was lost. Many of the most notable Quraysh warriors now deserted and converted to Islam joined the forces. As they advanced, they were met by Abu Sufyan himself, who had opposed Muhammad bitterly as a leader of the Quraysh, but now Sufyan wanted to become a Muslim. Allowed into his presence, Sufyan recited a poem that included these lines: I was like one going astray in the darkness of the night, but now I'm led on the right track. I could not guide myself, and he who was God overcame me. Was he whom I had driven away with all my might. According to Ishaq, when he got to the lines, he who was God overcame me, Muhammad punched him in the chest and said, You did indeed. When Muhammad said, Woe to you, Abu Sufyan, isn't it time that you recognise that I'm God Apostle? Sufyan replied, As to that, I still have some doubt. So again, Muhammad wanted total loyalty. He wasn't receiving that as Sufyan. At that, one of Muhammad's lieutenants, Abbas, said to Abu Sufyan, Submit and testify that there is no God but Allah, and that Muhammad is apostle of God before you lose your head. And of course, Sufyan responded to that, because again, brothers and sisters, with Islam, it's either be killed, it's either flee, or pay the jizya. So there is compulsion in Islam. There is. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying, because Islam is full of lies. Without lies, Islam dies. When Muhammad forced his entry into Mecca, according to Sa'id, the people embraced Islam willingly or unwillingly. He ordered the Muslims to fight only those individuals or groups who resisted their advance into the city, except for a list of people who were to be killed, even if they had sought sanctuary in the Kaaba itself. Muhammad was the master of Mecca, but there was one additional great obstacle between him and mastery of all Arabia. Malik ibn Auf, a member of the Thaqi tribe of the city of Taif, sort of south of Mecca, began to assemble a force to fight the Muslims. The people of Taif had rejected Muhammad and treated him shabbily when he presented his prophetic claim to them 10 years earlier. They had always been rivals of the Quraysh and viewed the conversion of the latter to Islam with disdain. Malik assembled a force and marched out to face the Muslims. Muhammad met him with an army 12,000 strong, saying, We shall not be worsted today for want of numbers. The two forces met at a wadi, in Egyptian language that refers to a dry riverbed, called Hunayn, near Mecca. Malik and his men arrived fast and took up positions that gave them an immense tactical advantage. The Muslims, despite their superior numbers, were routed. As they broke ranks and fled, Muhammad called out, Where are you going, men? Come to me. I am Muhammad, the son of Abdullah. Some of the Muslims did take heart, and gradually the tide began to turn, although there was tremendous loss of life on both sides. Muslims eventually prevailed, wiping out the last major force that stood between Islam and mastery of Arabia. After the battle, he received another revelation explaining that the Muslims had won because of supernatural help. With Malik defeated, the Muslims later conquered Taif with little resistance. On his way into the city, Muhammad stopped under a tree and, finding the area to his liking, sent word to the owner of the property, Either come out or we will destroy your wall. The owner refused to appear before Muhammad, so the Muslims indeed destroyed his property. Very violent type, aren't they, brothers and sisters? Endeavouring, however, to win the tribesmen of Taif to Islam, Muhammad was lenient toward them. On his distribution of the booty, he likewise favoured some of the recent converts among the Quraysh, hoping to cement their allegiance to Islam. His favouritism, however, led to grumbling. One Muslim approached him boldly. Muhammad, I have seen what you have done today. I don't think you have been just. He replied incredulously, If justice is not to be found with me, then where will you find it? With Jesus, of course. Jesus is the way, the truth and the life. Muhammad was determined to extend that justice to the world. Islamic tradition holds that he wrote to Heraclius, who was the Eastern Roman Emperor in Constantinople at the time, In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, from Muhammad, the slave of Allah, and his messenger, to Heraclius, of all of the Byzantines. Now then, I invite you to Islam. Embrace Islam and you will be safe. Embrace Islam and Allah will bestow on you a double reward. But if you reject this invitation of Islam, you will be responsible for misguiding the peasants, that is your nation. So again, more field and more overt threats from this group, brothers and sisters, a protected group. Then the letter quoted the Quran from chapter 2, verse 64. O people of the book, come to a common word between us and you, that you will not worship except Allah, not associate anything with him, and not take one another's laws instead of Allah. But if they turn away, then say, bear witness that we are Muslims. The letter contains a clear threat, brothers and sisters. Embrace Islam and you will be safe. Presumably then, Heraclius and his people would not be safe if they didn't embrace Islam. Heraclius, of course, didn't accept Islam, and so the Byzantines would know well that the warriors of jihad indeed granted no safety to those who made such a choice, as we will see along the way in the history of Islam, brothers and sisters. He sent a similar letter to Khosrow, who was the ruler of the Persians. After reading the letter, Khosrow contemptuously tore it to pieces. When news of this reached Muhammad, he called upon Allah to tear the Persian emperor and his followers to pieces. He told his followers that they would enjoy the fruits of jihadic victories over both Heraclius and Khosrow. When Khosrow perishes, there will be no more Khosrow after him. When Caesar perishes, there will be no more Caesar after him. By him in whose hands Muhammad's life is, you will spend the treasures of both of them in Allah's cause. Allah gave Muhammad a revelation commanding Muslims to fight even against Jews and Christians till they accepted Islamic hegemony, symbolised by payment of a poll tax jizya, which was soon to be imposed on the Spanish population from 711 to 1492, brothers and sisters, and discriminatory regulations that would ensure that they would be constantly reminded of their subordinate position. In Quran chapter 9 verse 29, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden which has been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth or of the people of the book until they pay the jizya. He told his followers to offer these unbelievers conversion to Islam, as he had offered to the rulers, and if they refused, to offer them the opportunity to pay tribute as vassals of the Islamic State, and if they refused that as well, to go to war. Fight in the name of Allah and in the way. Fight against those who disbelieve in him. Make a holy war. Do not embezzle the spoils, do not break your pledge, and do not mutilate the bodies, do not kill the children. When you meet your enemies who are polytheists, invite them to 3 courses of action. If they respond to any one of these, you also accept it and withhold yourself from doing them any more harm. Invite them to accept Islam. If they respond to you, accept it from them and desist from fighting against them. If they refuse to accept Islam, demand from them the jizya. If they agree to pay, accept it from them and hold off your hands. If they refuse to pay the tax, seek Allah's help and fight them. So there we go, brothers and sisters. After commanding his followers to make war against Christians, Muhammad resolved to set an example for his followers by doing just that. In the year 631, he ordered the Muslims to begin preparations for a raid on the Byzantine Empire at its northern Arabia garrison at Tabuk. The journey across the desert sands in the height of summer was arduous. When Muhammad and his large Muslim force arrived at the Byzantine holdings in northwestern Arabia, they found that the Byzantine troops had withdrawn rather than trying to engage them. On the way back, Allah gave Muhammad revelations scolding the Muslims who declined to go along on the expedition. Allah reminded the Muslims that their first duty was to him and his Prophet, and that those who refused to wage jihad would face terrible punishment. Not that Muhammad needed their help, of course, because he had Allah on his side. If he did not aid the Prophet, Allah had already aided him, when those who disbelieved had driven him out as one of 2, when they were in the cave, and he said to his companion, "Do not be grieved. Indeed, Allah is with us," and Allah sent down his tranquility upon him and supported him with angels you did not see, and made the word of those who disbelieved the lowest, while the word of Allah that is the highest. And Allah is exalted in might and wise. Quran chapter 9 verse 40. Nonetheless, to go forth in jihad for the sake of Allah, which denotes in Islamic theology armed struggle to establish the hegemony of the Islamic social order, is the best deed a Muslim can perform. According to Quran chapter 9 verse 41, go forth whether heavy or light, and strive with your wealth and your lives in the cause of Allah. That is better for you if you only knew. Muhammad emphasised this on many occasions. Once a man asked him, "Guide me to such a deed as equals jihad," Muhammad answered, "I do not find such a deed." Allah told Muhammad that the true Muslims did not hesitate to wage jihad, even to the point of risking their property and their very lives. The ones who refused to do this weren't even believers at all. This striving with their wealth and lives was, in the context of Muhammad's circumstances, unmistakably a military command, particularly in light of the fact that Allah was guaranteeing paradise to those who would fight in the way of Allah and shall slay and be slain. In Quran chapter 9 verse 111. The Arabic word for striving, by the way, being a form of the word jihad. On another occasion he said, "I have been commanded to fight against people till they testify to the fact that there is no God but Allah." The obverse was also true. If they did not become Muslims, their blood and riches would not be guaranteed any protection from the Muslims. At this time, Muhammad was now the undisputed leader of Arabia. The Arabian rulers and tribes that had not yet submitted to his authority now began to journey to Medina to accept his religion and pay him homage. To the lands of those who did not come, Muhammad sent jihad warriors. He sent the fearsome fighter Khalid bin al-Walid to the Al-Harith tribe, instructing him to call them to accept Islam 3 days before he attacked them, and to call off the battle if they converted. Khalid duly told the tribe leaders, "If you accept Islam, you will be safe." whereupon the tribe converted. Khalid notified him and sent a deputation from the tribe to Medina to see Muhammad, who told them, "If Khalid had not written to me that you had accepted Islam, had not fought, I would throw your heads beneath your feet." From Himyar in South Arabia came a letter informing Muhammad that the kings of the region had accepted Islam and waged war in Allah's name against the remaining pagans in the area. Muhammad was pleased, sending them a response, informing them that your messenger reached me on my return from the land of the Byzantines, and he met us in Medina, conveyed your message on your news, and informed us of your Islam and of your killing the polytheists. He detailed the obligations as Muslims and directed that Jews and Christians in their domains should be invited to convert to Islam. If they refused, they were not to be turned from their religions. Rather, the Jew or Christian in his newly made Muslim lands must pay the poll tax, the jizya, i.e., for every adult male or female, free or slave, one full dinar, and he gave instructions for how that amount, or its equivalent in clothes, was to be calculated. He reminded the kings that the lives of the Jews and Christians depended on their payment of this tax. He who pays that to God's prophet has the guarantee of God and his apostle. He who withholds it is the enemy of God and his apostle. Ultimately, he determined that Jews and Christians would no longer be allowed in Arabia at all. He said to his companions, "I will expel the Jews and Christians from the Arabian Peninsula and will not leave any but Muslims." He gave just such an order on his deathbed. The jizya tax was very important because besides raiding, which produced inconsistent results, it was the Muslims' chief source of income. This is clear in a letter Muhammad sent to a Jewish tribe, the Banu Jamba. He assured them that under the guarantee of Allah and the guarantee of his apostle there will be no cruelty or oppression on you. Verily, he will defend you. However, verily will be the booty which you receive on making peace with some party and every slave you get, as well as animals and other objects, except that which he or his envoy remits. Verily it is binding on you to pay 1/4 of the yield of your date palms, and 1/4 of your gain from the rivers, and 1/4 of what your women spin, which is in terms of textiles or clothes. But that was all. Besides that, you will be exempt from jizya and forced labour. Likewise, to a Christian ruler Muhammad wrote, "I will not fight you unless I write to you in advance." Remember, brothers and sisters, the key word "unless." So join the fold of Islam or pay the jizya. The onerous tax burdens that Jews and Christians in Muslim domains bore simply for the privilege of being allowed to live in relative peace would become the key source of income for the great Islamic empires, not great in the positive sense, brothers and sisters, that carried Muhammad's jihad into Africa, Europe and Asia. The dhimmis were the protected people in the Islamic State who paid the jizya. Now, according to Islamic tradition, Muhammad died in 632, even if he existed anywhere, brothers and sisters, because there is another argument, which I will not be using in this series, brothers and sisters, that he didn't exist, because I want to take what they say, because there is a real strong argument that he didn't even exist, brothers and sisters, because at that time, the map of Mecca and Medina wasn't even there. There's a great video by Jay Smith detailing this on his channel called Fanda Films. You can check it out, brothers and sisters, on YouTube. But apparently he died in 632. Now Ishaq, his biographer, reports that he had participated in 27 battles. He could have potentially battled in more. And here we have the first part of the History of Islam series complete. See you all in the next episode, brothers and sisters. God bless you all, and glory to God and to Jesus, who has triumphed over death, brothers and sisters. Glory to him. Muhammad is in hell right now, because he was a demon and he did wicked things, as we've seen in this first episode. And Muhammad is our saviour. Muhammad's in hell rotting away. Even if he exists, he's rotting away. But Jesus does exist, and he's living right now, and you can accept him, and he's in heaven. Thank you, brothers and sisters, for listening. God bless you.